Hello, I'm Joel Daring with the Volleyball Hall of Fame. We're speaking one-on-one today with members of the induction class for 2013. This is Volleyball in Perspective. I'm joined by Natalie Cook. Natalie, welcome. You're being inducted today for a tremendous beach volleyball career where you have the distinction of being the only athlete to compete in the first 5 Olympic Games that sponsored beach volleyball, and among many honors for winning the 2000 gold medal in the Sydney Games, along with our 2007 Hall of Fame inductee, Carrie Parkhurst. You also hold the distinction to be the only Australian Olympian to compete in 5 consecutive games in any sport, and your appearance in 175 FIVB international events is the most of any athlete. Let's start at the beginning. Could you share a few memories of your first experiences in sport, including when you first started playing volleyball?
Well, I started very early on. My mum was a swim teacher, so learning to swim, and the place I was born was very hot, so swimming was one of the top sports, and I developed a discipline and a love for sport in swimming. And then I did move on to a range of different sports because I got sick of that black line, up and down that black line, the smell of chlorine and early mornings and late afternoons, so I thought there's got to be a better way. And when I was in year 9 at high school, there was a notice on the school notice board about this big that said volleyball trip to Canada and America. And so I raced upstairs to the PE department and I said, what's volleyball? And that's really how I got involved with the sport of volleyball, and that was 24 years ago.
Wow, that's a great story. How big is your family, and did you inherit your athletic abilities from your parents?
I think I did. My father was a semi-professional soccer player in England. And he played cricket as well, and my mum was a swimmer and a swim teacher, and so they were very athletic. They always encouraged me to get outside and run and jump and kick the ball and play sport. So I give a lot of credit to my genes from mum and dad and their willingness to take me everywhere to participate in sport.
How about martial arts? You were involved in martial arts at a young age. What impact do you think that had on your development as an athlete and other activities maybe later on that you enjoyed as well?
We moved cities from Townsville to Brisbane in Australia, and Mum was afraid that Brisbane was a bigger city and I needed to learn some self-defense. So hence going into martial arts, I got my black belt in Taekwondo at the age of 14, and it taught me a lot of discipline, a lot of character building, resilience and strength. And when you're fighting against boys and men and women, sparring, there's nowhere to hide, and that's similar to beach volleyball. When you're out there two-a-side, no coach to help you, there's nowhere to hide. So I think I got a lot of that from my martial arts background.
That's terrific. Did you have sports heroes growing up, or do you have a teammate you looked up to, or one that was a particular favorite?
Well, when I was growing up, Michael Jordan was the highlight, and watching him sort of fly through the air and slam dunk the basketball, and Greg Norman, a famous Australian golfer, would see him walking the fairway and putting in, and my love of golf really resonated with him too. So they were my 2 sort of sporting icons. Teammates, there are a lot of my teammates that I would look up to and that would inspire me along the way back in high school days. And Shelley Thomas, she was a Proban back then, but she was one that took me under her wing, and she encouraged me to keep being the best I could be and being loud and vibrant as a player, when sometimes that's not looked upon favourably. But together we were pretty tough on the volleyball court.
It seems that the early 1990s put you at a real crossroad in your life. Tell us about transitioning from indoor volleyball to beach volleyball, and the decision to move away from your pursuit of a medical degree to play professionally.
Yeah, it sort of all happened at the same time. I finished high school. I was offered a spot at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. I was offered a spot with the national senior women's team in Perth, and I was in my physiotherapy degree. So I really found it tough. My parents wanted me to get a career because at the time beach volleyball wasn't much. It had just started in its infancy. And so I pursued my physiotherapy degree for 2 years and said no to the opportunity to come to the United States of America and a college scholarship, which was the thing to do. Right. And we were just reflecting, my parents were reflecting on it with me just the other day of how that was really the crucial turning point, to stay in Australia, study, and then beach volleyball was announced in 1993 to go to the Olympic Games for the first time in Atlanta. And I knew then that it was time to pursue an Olympic career, and beach volleyball was, I was in the right place at the right time for beach volleyball.
What makes the sport of volleyball, and beach volleyball specifically, special to you?
You know, I played a lot of sports, golf, tennis, even rode a skateboard, martial arts, netball, cricket, soccer, I did everything. And then when I found this sport called volleyball, it really baffled me, the rebounding, the working as a team in such a small space. Not that I was very good at that working as a team thing. I loved the ball, right? So I would chase it around, and trying to stay in a position where there's another 5 of you was very challenging. And I think that's partly why beach volleyball was so much better for me when there was only 2. And sometimes Kerry and I would still run into each other. But the sport of volleyball for me was just something that challenged the mind, it challenged the heart, it challenged the spirit. And I just loved it. Every day I'd get up and thought, how could I do that better? And it never, even to this day, 24 years on, I still haven't mastered the sport of beach volleyball. It's mastering me, and every day I could find something that I could do better.
So tell us about the experience in Atlanta. You won a bronze medal, but just tell us about the experience.
Well, a 21-year-old kid going to the Olympic Games for the first time, and the first time beach volleyball's in the Olympics. It felt like Disneyland, visiting Disneyland again for the first time. And you just walk in to the opening ceremony with 110,000 people, and you know, just the jaw drops and the excitement and the anticipation of playing Olympic Games, the first one. So that was amazing. For us to then come out and win an Olympic bronze medal, the first time, you know, setting foot on the sand was very, very special. And we thought we could win, but Jackie Silver and Sandra Perez just were so much more skillful. But the interesting thing about an Olympic Games is the skill goes out the window. It is all about the heart and the desire and the passion, and doesn't matter about anything's happened before, it's right there at that moment. And that's, Kerry and I thought we could win. So coming third was great, and it really set us in motion for obviously the next one, which was our hometown.
Home turf. So let's talk about this a little bit, leading up to the Sydney Games. Tell us about changing partners after the Atlanta Games, and then reuniting with Kerry in the year preceding the Sydney Games, and what was the key to all of that resulting in a gold medal?
Well, after you win a bronze, you sit down with a piece of paper and you go, okay, now we want to win a gold, and how are we going to do that? We go through our planning with our coach, and you know, it looks easy on paper. You just got to go second, and then you've got to win. And so in 1997, we weren't winning. We weren't playing very well. We were getting beaten. And of course, on a beach volleyball court, there's only 2 of you. So when you ask yourself, whose fault is it? You kind of go like this. And we weren't getting along too well, so we separated. I came across a success coach called Curic Ashley, who's a world record fire walker and glass walker. And I know you'll get onto that a bit later, but he sort of changed my whole perspective on life. And Kerry saw this happening, and she'll hate me for saying this, but she's 10 years older than me, and she still is, and she always will be. So she was a lot older, a lot more mature, and she saw my perspective on the game change. And so I got a phone call that said, hey, it's time for us to get back together. And as much as I wanted to hold her off and just let her suffer for a little while, I said yes. And we went, by that stage, coming back together, our focus and our drive was so narrow, and we were on the same page, and it was relentless that we were going to win the Olympic gold medal. And for a year and a half leading into Sydney, there was no other option. And so it all just came to fruition. We're playing Brazil and Bondi Beach. They'd beaten us 17 times. We'd beaten them once. And so on paper, they probably should have won. But you know, nobody had seen our piece of paper of what we were creating. And the magic came good on that one day, September 25th, 2000, and the rest is history.
So September 25th, 2000, what was the best part about winning gold at home?
Being able to look up in the crowd and you know, the infamous chant, Aussie, 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 and then you hear the oi, oi, oi ringing at 10,000 people, and and seeing family and friends and my grandparents in the audience, and my friend Shelley that I talked about, mum and dad, and just knowing that all of the sacrifices of family, friends, sponsors, doctors, coaches, you know, was all worth it, and that we could share that with them was very, very special.
You mentioned this before, and I'm curious about this. I think others are too. Go back to the beginning of your beach volleyball. Was it commonplace to have a coach? It certainly wasn't years before that. And maybe talk about that a little bit, and maybe talk about specific coaches that you had that made a difference for your career.
I was very lucky in my career. I had two coaches. I had one for 16 years, Steve Anderson, which was probably the most influential person in my volleyball career, from the US, hailing out of Santa Monica, originally from Louisville, Kentucky. And we found him at Santa Monica, and we took him to Australia and said, do you want to help us get an Olympic medal? Because no one in Australia thinks we can do it. So that was a challenge for him. So I had him for 96, 2000, 2004 and 2012. And I had a Brazilian volleyball coach for 2008, Alamau, who was a world champion as well. And so I've had two very influential coaches, but Steve for 16 years just made me the volleyball person and player I was over those 20 years. And very, very special for me was Steve. But back in the beginning, Kerry was the coach of our team, which, as you can appreciate, was a bit trying. And so when we came fourth in an event in Portugal in 1994, and we kind of looked at each other and said, we could be good at this, but we can't do it with just the two of us. So we instantly flew to the US. We changed our ticket. We were supposed to fly home to Australia. We changed our ticket to go to the US to find a coach. And we interviewed 7. We said, you've got 2 hours to teach us everything you know about beach volleyball, and at the end of that, we'll employ someone. So Steve was number 3, and we didn't go past Steve, so he was pretty impressive.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Who are the top competitors from other countries that provided the greatest challenge for you on the sand?
It was Brazil, without a doubt. As a nation, you know, they just had competitor after competitor, and you get through, you beat one team and you think, that's it, and then there's another one coming and another one coming. And then they just had so much depth. And the United States, of course, were, you know, Holly McPeak, Nancy Reno, Elaine Youngs, Angela Rock, Carolyn Kirby, Liz Mazakayan. You know, that just kept coming. The Americans just kept coming. And so Brazil, the US, and then Kerry and I, as an Australian pair, were probably the top teams going to 96 and 2000. And then we started to see the European influence for 2004 and beyond, Germany and Austria and, you know, Russia. So the sport has just grown in its depth globally. But in the beginning, it was Brazil and the United States, and I would spend a lot of time in San Diego and Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo Beach, training with the girls, and a lot of time in Brazil.
Tell us about playing with Tamsin Hinchley in 2008 and the 2012 games, and all during that time.
Yeah, Tamsin and I played 2 Olympics together, but it was very like a roller coaster. In that time, I'd had knee surgeries, she'd had a baby boy, we lived in different cities, like 2 hours flight away, we were training on our own. I used to train and put a chair in the sand and talk to the chair like she was Tamsin, you know. It was just really challenging time for us. We did it amazingly well in Beijing off a very short preparation. We had only a year and we finished 5th. We really had a shot at getting in the semi-finals, but that's sport, you know, you just miss. And but we had, you know, she was a very dominant blocker at the net, and I played all the defense. She was one of the best physically specimen beach volleyball athletes you'd find. And when I retired, she's just had she's about to have another child, so I'm not sure she will go on, but I think she would have liked for me to continue to play so she could continue her career. But we had a good time. We just didn't produce the results that we would have liked in London. But for us to qualify for London, that was like winning a gold medal for me. It was the toughest Olympic campaign I've ever done. And the day we qualified, I think it was like winning.
Wow, that's fantastic. What was the key to your lengthy career despite competing in such a physically demanding sport, between training and just competing?
I think it's the love for the sport, the love for waking up every day and wanting to be the best I could be, and knowing that you can't master this game of beach volleyball. It finds a way to have its way with you. You know, just when you think you're in the right spot or you make the perfect play, the wind comes or they change the rules or something happens that you have to find a new way to be better. And I just found a way it was the thrill of traveling the world, of going to new places, of meeting new people, the competition and rivalry with my fellow athletes. And when the whistle blows, the first time the ball served across the net, the adrenaline pumping there is just, it's addictive.
So finally, tell us about glass walking and some of the other motivational speaking topics you have worked with.
Yeah, when Kerry and I won in Sydney, we both became professional speakers. Team building, leadership, motivational speaking, and in that there's glass walking. So you heard me talk about fire walking as well, which is very different. But the glass is something you can do inside. It's a contained space, and it literally is broken beer bottles and wine bottles, and standing at one side of the broken glass and thinking your brain says there is no way I can walk on that. And it's often something that stops us on the volleyball court. I can't beat this team, or that's not possible for me. So if you can get across the glass, with which the whole premise is one step at a time with certainty. And that's life's metaphor. If you take life one step at a time with certainty, you will be successful. So when you get across the glass and you turn around, you look back and you think, hey, if I can do that, then I can do anything else I put my mind to. And it's all about focus and it's all about clarity. And yeah, so we get participants to walk across the glass. They tend to have a shift in their mindset as they get across. But one of the best parts of our preparation for Sydney was surrounding ourselves with gold. So everything I owned was gold. I had a gold toaster, gold boxer shorts, gold sheets, gold car, gold sunglasses. We even have a brand of soap in Australia called Palmolive Gold, and I would wash with that soap. And it was a case of just having this space of everything I saw in my life was gold, and it just locks it in like a tractor beam.
Fantastic.
So that's what we talk about. Belief. It's all about your belief. If you can have this inner belief that anything is possible, then you'll achieve it in your life, and that's what we talk about.
Well, I hope people who end up seeing this will go, it's not hard to find you doing the glass walking. I found it on YouTube, and I saw corporate executives walking across, and it's fascinating. So appreciate you sharing that. And I've got to ask you about Adam Scott. I know you have a love for golf.
Yeah, well, we saw Greg Norman for many years attempt to win the green jacket, and then for him to win for Australia was a big thing for golf. And I'm very excited now because golf is an Olympic sport. I'm the president of the Queensland Olympic Council in my state, and so Adam's a Queenslander. We hope to welcome him to the Olympic family in Rio.
Wow.
And for him to win the green jacket was very special. So the opening ceremony uniform for the Australian team in London was a green jacket. So I feel like we have this special bond.
That's fantastic. What do you see as the biggest changes today in beach volleyball when you go back, mid-90s, early 90s, I guess it was, when you first hit the beach and started competing? What do you see as the biggest changes now?
Well, first, apart from all the rules, so you've got a smaller court, you've got a bigger ball slightly, you've got rally scoring, best of 3 sets. You know, those things have changed. The athletes have got taller and stronger, and there is more professionalism in the sport. Teams are coming out with not only one coach, but sometimes 2, and then a strength coach, and they're coming with physiotherapists and a medical team. There's a lot more money in the sport. So we're seeing a transition to a sport that can hold its own on the world stage. I think it's still got a little bit to go in terms of commercialization, but it can be right up there. You know, we watch the tennis players and get envious of the paychecks they're playing for, but beach volleyball definitely has the capability of being at that level, and I hope that one day I get to see that.
You've done a lot to bring it along, that's for sure. So my final question, how do you feel about being inducted into the Volleyball Hall of Fame?
Yeah, that's an amazing honour to be a part of a group, a select group that have, I think all of them in the Hall of Fame to date have made a difference to the sport, not just in the way the game's played, but off court too, and the service to the sport. And to be in that group is very, very special. I have a legacy that I'm building in Australia for beach volleyball, and I hope that the game has made me the person I am today, and I just hope that I can continue to give back to it so that it can keep giving to the young players of not only Australia but the world. It's the greatest game we've ever seen, and for me to have 20 years in it and go to 5 Olympic Games, I'm truly grateful.
Yeah. Well, and we're very grateful for the time you spent with us today, Natalie. Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Volleyball Hall of Fame Class of 2013 honoree Natalie Cook. This is Volleyball in Perspective, and I'm your host, Joel Daring. Thank you for watching.